Good day everyone, I am Lisa of BSED Science 2A, and in this video I'm going to discuss about the physical development of infants and toddlers. First, let's identify what is the difference between infants and toddlers. Infancy is basically the early stage or the beginning of development. An infant is a baby under 1 year old, while toddler is a young child over 1 year of age to 3. Toddlers are young children that are learning to walk and talk. Physical development relates to changes, growth, and skill development of the body, including the development of muscles and senses. It refers to the natural processes by which bodies grow, evolve, and develop over time. Between the ages of birth and 3, young children rapidly grow and attain critical milestone, laying the groundwork for future development. That's why one of the most essential domain of infants and toddler development is the physical development. There are two patterns of physical development: the cephalocaudal and the proximodistal trend. Cephalocaudal was derived from the term cephalo, which means head, and caudal, which means tail or lower body. So typically, cephalocaudal trend refers to the changes or growth from top to bottom. Cephalocaudal demonstrates how infants developmentally learn to use their upper limbs before their lower limbs. The most visible illustration of cephalocaudal is how an infant's head grows disproportionately large in comparison to their body. Proximodistal trend, on the other hand, is the tendency for more general functions of limbs to develop before more specific or fine motor skills. The term proximodistal comes from the Latin words proxim, which means close, and dis, meaning away from, because the trend essentially describes a path from the center outward. The proximodistal pattern of development is characterized by growth that begins in the body center and progresses outward to the extremities. The early development of muscular control of the torso and arms in relation to the hands and fingers is example of this pattern. Now, let's discuss about the development of height and weight. The body weight of newborn babies drop by 5 to 10% within the couple weeks of birth. That is due to the baby's adjustment to neonatal feeding. But when they adjust to sucking, swallowing, and digesting, they will grow rapidly. Breastfeed babies typically weigh heavier than the bottle-fed babies during the first 6 months. One likely reason for this is that breast milk is a dynamic and ever-changing food composed of the exact nutrition a baby needs at that stage. Then, after 6 months, breastfeed babies usually weigh less than the bottle-fed babies. An infant's length increases by about 30% in the first 5 months. The baby's weight usually triples during the first year but slows down during the second year of life. Low percentages of development is not a cause for alarm as long as infants progress along a natural curve of development. Now, let's tackle about brain development. Among the most dramatic changes in the brain in the first 2 years of life are the spreading connections of dendrites to each other. Dendrites are appendages that are designed to receive communications from other cells. Myelination or myelinization is a process by which axons are covered and insulated by layers of cells. This process increases the speed at which information travels through the nervous system. It enables nerve cells to transmit information faster and allows for more complex brain processes. At birth, the newborn's brain is about 25% of its adult weight. By the second birth, the brain is about 75% of its adult weight. A baby's brain produces trillions of connections between neurons after birth. The infant's brain literally waits for experience to determine those connections in the brain. The connections that are unused or seldom used will be eliminated. Now let's talk about motor development. Motor development is the physical growth and strengthening of a child's bones, muscles, and ability to move and touch his or her surroundings. Along the aspect of motor development, infants and toddlers begins from reflexes to gross motor skills and fine motor skills. Before they learn, newborns have innate reflexes that function as survival mechanisms. As the baby develops and matures, the reflexes that are present during birth will disappear. There are 7 common reflexes. First is the sucking reflex. It is initiated when something touches the roof of an infant's mouth. The baby will begin to suck when this area is stimulated. This reflex helps with nursing or bottle feeding. Second is the rooting reflex. This reflex starts when the baby's cheek or the corner of the mouth is stroked or touched. The baby will turn their head and open their mouth to follow and root in the direction of the stroking. This helps the baby find the breast or bottle for feeding. Next is gripping reflex. It is an involuntary response. Babies will grasp everything that is placed in their palm. This grip is actually strong enough to hold the baby's weight. The curling reflex. When the inside sole of the baby's foot is massaged, the baby's toes curl inward. Infants respond by spreading out their toes when the outside sole of their foot is touched. This reflex occurs from the time the baby is born and the time he or she reaches the age of 1 to 2 years old. Next is the startle or the motor reflex. It usually happens when the baby is frightened by a loud sound or movement. The baby throws back his or her head, stretches his or her arms and legs, cries, and then pulls the arms and legs in, again in response to the sound. The gallant reflex. It is shown when the middle and the lower backs of infants are stroked adjacent to the spinal cord. They will curve their bodies towards the side that is being stroked in response. Gallant reflex aids in the development of range of motions in the baby's hip, preparing them to crawl and ultimately walk. Lastly, the tonic neck reflex. The tonic neck reflex is often called the fencing reflex. It can be seen in babies who are placed in their abdomen. When a baby is lying down and turns their head to the right or left, the matching arm stretches, while the other arms bend next to the head. This makes them look like they're about to start fencing. Lifespan development of infants and toddlers. Gross motor skills. These are motor skills that enable babies to keep their heads up, sit, crawl, and eventually walk, run, leap, and skip by requiring whole body movements and motor development of muscles. Fine motor skills. These skills requires coordination between the child's small muscles like those in their hands, wrists, and fingers in coordination with their eyes. Fine motor skills involves the small muscles of the body that enable such functions as writing, grasping small objects, and fastening clothes. The newborn senses the world into which they are born through their senses of vision, hearing, touch, and smell. As they advances physically, their sensory and perceptual abilities also develop. So the question is, can newborns see? The vision of a newborn is around 10 to 30 times worse than that of an adult. Their vision improves by 6 months of age, and by their first birthday, they have the same vision as an adult. Infants tended to gaze at the patterns such as faces and concentric circles rather than colors and brightness, according to the results of a study done by Robert Franz. As mothers feed and nurse their babies, one of the first things that babies learn to recognize is their mother's faces. Can newborns hear? Infant sense of hearing develops well before birth. The baby can hear his or her mother's heartbeat, stomach grumblings, and mother's voice in music while still in the womb. Because infant sensory thresholds are higher than adults, stimuli must be louder for a newborn to hear them. Can newborns differentiate odors? McFarlane conducted an experiment that revealed that when the babies were just 2 days old, young breastfeed infants have a clear preference for sniffing their mother's breast pads. The result shows that recognizing their mother's breast pad odors takes several days of practice. Can newborns respond to touch? Well, babies can respond to touch. They can suck on things placed on their mouth instinctively, and touching their cheeks causes them to move their heads into the side that was touched. Can newborns distinguish different tastes? In a study conducted, only 2-hour-old babies made different facial expressions when they tasted sweet, sour, and bitter solutions. This means that sensitivity to taste must be present before birth. The following are examples of physical development milestones of infants and toddlers. In the first 2 months, infants are able to hold their heads up with support, begins to push up when lying on tummy, and take smoother movements with arms and legs. During 4 months, they can hold their heads steady without support, push down on legs when feet are on a hard surface, rolls over from tummy to back, and holds and shakes toys. In 6 months, infants can roll over both from stomach to back and from back to stomach, begin to sit with support, supports weight on legs when standing, and can rocks back and forth, sometimes crawls backward before moving forward. In the age of 9 months, they can crawl, sit without support, move into sitting position with support, and can stand by holding onto adults or furnitures. When they reach the age of 1 year old, they can now move into sitting position without support, can pull up the stand and walk alone without holding into furnitures, can take few steps without support of adults, and they can stand on their own. By the age of 18 months or 1 year old and 6 months, they can walk alone, run, pull toys while walking, helps undress themselves, drink from a cup, and they can eat using spoon. On their second year, toddlers now know how to run, climb onto and down from furnitures without support, walk up and down steps while holding on for supports, throw ball overhand, draw and copy straight lines and circles, and lastly, to stand on their tiptoes. And that's all for my report. Thank you for watching.